Nature is interested in order because only through order a balanced exchange of information and thus the law of multiplicity in unity is maintained. If our DNA is the switching point between nature and individual life, one could ask oneself, where is the switching point between the individual and society located? From where is the tremendous organization of the social life actually accomplished? A possible answer would be from the collective consciousness of society, the abstract DNA of a group, which affects the entire exchange of information of this group via the finest possible connecting channels. This is a bold assertion. One could object. Where's the evidence? A society of human beings definitely needs switchboards from where the complexity of its interactions is maintained so that order can prevail over chaos. The phenomenon of collective consciousness has been studied in multiple ways over time. In a scientific sense, it can be understood as an expression of the quantum field of the universe. This is the area which is spontaneously connected to the whole and its parts, and the whole can effortlessly perceive the manifold interests of the part. Collective consciousness is a highly complex term. It relates to the individual like the body to the cell. The body knows the cell functions. This is only possible by enacting a kind of self-referral dynamics. And the organizer of this is what is called coherence. It has become clear that consciousness is a field phenomenon that can be understood in terms of quantum field theory. Numerous sociological studies, for example, on the field effects of individuals practicing group meditation and creating social coherence, have already been conducted worldwide by social scientists since the mid-70s. Borland and Landreth published the first statistical study of the Maharishi Effect in 1976. 11 cities in which at least 1% of the population had learned transcendental meditation by the end of 1972 were compared to 11 corresponding control cities, with relatively few participants in the TM program. In the course of a subsequent model project in 108 countries, in which more than 1,000 teachers of the TM technique were sent to the main crisis areas of the world, social turmoil was demonstrably reduced in the Middle East, in Rhodesia, Nicaragua, Iran, and Southeast Asia during the presence of these experts.
This paper was performed at a standard of scientific rigor far beyond that required for publication in any journal. So this chart shows a dotted line going up and down, which is the rise and fall on a daily basis of the number of people who were meditating as a group in Jerusalem. About 1,000 people on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. And the solid line represents progress towards peace in the war in neighboring Lebanon. And even before the benefit of statistical analysis, you can almost see from the raw data that progress towards peace, measured by reduced war deaths, reduced war injuries, reduced number of bombs, that progress towards peace goes up and down almost in lockstep with the number of people who were meditating as a group, radiating this influence of inner peace to become outer peace.
For the first time on the level of the field of consciousness, a world fire department, so to say, had come into action, whose members could claim to extinguish any fire arising from the chaos of the collective consciousness of a country by means of the superradiance or coherence effect of small individual groups on a whole given larger population. The formula is based on the unique discovery that consciousness, in its finest aspect, is a realm of infinite correlation. It is intimately connected with every point of the universe in time and space, and in accordance with the most modern findings of quantum field theory, a subtle, life-enhancing impulse generated on this abstract level of pure consciousness therefore directly influences the near and far environment. This coherence-creating program was reinforced with the help of the so-called TM-City program, a special advanced technique highly efficient in group practices where the square root of 1% of a given number of practitioners of this technique is enough to create the Maharishi Effect. The most sensational demonstration of the Maharishi Effect so far was experienced by the world at the turn of the year 1983-84 during the so-called Utopia Assembly in Fairfield, Iowa, USA, when more than 7,000 experts of the TM-City program, later called the Maharishi Technology of the Unified Field, came together for the first time in such a large number from all over the world. This corresponded exactly to the square root of 1% of the world's population at that time. Under huge dome roofs, which had been erected especially for the common program, experts demonstrated the global quantum effect of consciousness by generating from the silence of the unified field a field coherence which caused measurable change in the entire consciousness. The measurement results obtained by numerous teams of scientists showed the positive trend change predicted for this 3-week World Assembly in all important areas of society. Heads of state were more positive in their political and social perspectives. International conflicts, such as the Lebanon conflict, subsided for the duration of the assembly. Accident rates and infectious diseases decreased drastically. The World Economic Stock Index, as well as the US stock market, experienced a surprising high for 20 days to the day. The principle of superradiance had found its planetary application. The particle accelerator this time was not a scientific research laboratory, but the nervous system of 7,000 experts of the group dynamics of consciousness, who had produced a global field effect by enlivening the field of all fields in themselves. The law of the superradiance was discovered by Dick in 1954 and finds its application above all in laser physics. It says that a short, strong and coherent radiance impulse can set atoms in coherent oscillation, and these then transmit the absorbed energy amplified. This coherence amplifier effect is made possible by the fact that the atoms are excited to behave in phase. A collection of atoms then reacts like a single atom. Instead of the usual scattering, there is a bundling of energy, which, as in the case of laser light, has special quantum mechanical properties. The phase equality occurring in the case of the laser light leads to the fact that the radiated energy increases the square of the involved atoms. This means that 100 atoms behaving in perfect phase equality radiate 10,000 times more energy than a single atom. Quote, transferred to the field of consciousness, this makes understandable that a numerical minority of individuals can exert a strong influence of coherence and order on the totality, which is able to change the world consciousness. End of quote. The challenge to understand all this correctly lies in the fact that we as individuals have difficulties to see through the holistic order mechanisms such as coherence, superradiance, etc. However, nature proves to work with these principles all the time. We just have to look more deeply into her functioning. The German quantum scientist Professor Fritz Albert Popp was able to prove a mechanism of this kind in the context of his cancer research on the level of DNA. Popp assumed that the fundamental level of the physiological self-organization, as it is contained in the DNA, can only be explained by coherence phenomena. He explained that coherent light is responsible for maintaining cell-to-cell communication in the sense of maximum order within the individual structural levels of physiology. The switching point of all organizing power in the body is the DNA. So one can conclude from this, our DNA uses the quantum field effect of coherence to master the complicated control of millions of commands and information inputs. The DNA, as a deep physiological terminal of the cosmic computer, thanks to its perfect data storage and data transmission, as they are possible in the quantum realm, organizes the whole body and the operations of the greatest enterprise of evolution, individual life. Popp clearly showed that cancer arises from the breakdown of coherence at the level of DNA. The natural cell-to-cell communication by means of biophotons or biophotonic emission is hampered, with the result that the internal superradiance of inner light does not exist anymore. The ultra-weak cell luminescence in living systems exemplifies that by enhancing the individual cell luminescence in a society by means of group techniques of consciousness, like the TM and TM-City program. We can create a healthy and evolutionary environment without the usual shadow makers of crime, of wars, of pandemics, etc. The physician Harmer, in the same context, speaks of electrophysiological field intrusions in the brain, which cause, so to speak, a short circuit in the command center. We could say metaphorically that crime, social unrest, wars, etc. are nothing else than the breakdown of coherence on the level of collective consciousness. So then, if reputed scientists see illness as a breakdown of psychophysiological coherence, the next step is to see the illness of a culture as the catastrophe of social coherence, itself caused by the lack of individual coherence. Social cellular light emission, we could say, an efficient way for bringing the social collective body back to its intrinsic coherence, and thereby avoiding the breakdown of balance and all kinds of cancers of the collective. And this can have mirror effects all around. Years ago, the English biochemist Rupert Sheldrake put forward an interesting theory, according to which so-called morphogenetic fields are effective in nature. Certain patterns, behaviors, even discoveries, etc., once developed, are retrieved independently of their local limitations or causal relationships. Sheldrake proved, for example, that members of a species take up certain learning contents much faster if a group of the same species has already learned the same contents somewhere else, and this without that a direct influence between the two groups had taken place. This would mean that the group consciousness or coherence effect of meditating individuals, as described before, can serve as triggers for morphogenetic resonances worldwide. This is the special trick of nature, and its functioning from the so-called unified field. Space and time are transcended. Synchronicity and infinite connectedness become the laws. The smallest of elements can affect the total. This is when quantum field resonances take over the limited principles of the world as we are used to envision. Well known also is the example of the pacemaker cells in the heart muscle, whose activity is sufficient for the whole organ to contract simultaneously. Likewise, only about 1% of the brain cells are sufficient to strengthen the function of a whole system of cells. Furthermore, experience teaches that any structure, whether individual or collective, which functions coherently and harmoniously within itself, is immune to negative influences from outside. That means it becomes invincible. In quantum physics, the Maharishi Effect describes how in a superconductor, the collective state of a highly coherent flow of electrons is spontaneously immune to a magnetic field acting from the outside and maintains its coherent state of order for any length of time. The famous physicist Erwin Schrödinger stated that any creative aspect of life is accompanied by an increase in order and a decrease in entropy or disorder. It is precisely this order from the environment that is available to the human nervous system and society when they come, for example, under the harmony-building influence of the superradiance of the TM-City program. We can also view the practical aspect of the Maharishi technology of the unified field as a special program for our nervous system to bring, so to say, order. Is it surprising that this order is also reflected in the realm of society as a whole? As Maharishi said, this pulsating consciousness of the individual generates life impulses everywhere, and because this is the actual fundamental level of each, every man's thinking and every man's consciousness is affected by it.
99 people may violate their own nature to grow and may be weaving around non-growth. 1 in 100 having a desire to evolve, having a desire to progress, having a desire to grow by nature, will take up transcendental meditation. And on that basis, he will start producing harmonious influence around him without knowing how he does it, without knowing the mechanics, how the radiations go from a more orderly mind to influence the less orderly minds around, without knowing it.
Thus we see the effects of a few meditating people in society. The whole society becomes more positive in its tendencies, more positive in its thinking. The perception of the whole population is tremendously influenced. That is why the criminals change, the negativity changes. A person who thinks like this today will think differently tomorrow. All non-evolutionary processes in thinking are transformed. That is, thinking spontaneously comes into harmony with the laws of nature. When you understand and feel that you are already connected to the limitless in this life, desires and attitudes change. In the end, one is valid only because of the essential. And if one does not have that, life is wasted, says the famous psychologist C.G. Jung. The essential is our own center, our own self. If nature has a plan of salvation ready for our troubled earth, then this plan will only be fulfilled from the center of man himself. Never in the history of mankind has the responsibility of the individual been as great as it is today in our modern mass society. In the conversations Maharishi Mahesh Yogi had with Nikolai and De Witt, the founders of the innate supergravity theory of quantum physics, in the presence of outstanding scientists of all disciplines, it became clear that the unified field of all the laws of nature, as postulated by modern physics, is, in the last instance, observable only on its own level. It is provable only to the individual himself from within his own consciousness, but it is provable also in its far-reaching effects in social coherence creating groups via superradiance, when individuals practice techniques of consciousness like the TMCD program, which transcend the limited boundaries of single subject-object relations. The greatest vibration generator and oscillator in nature is the human nervous system. And how, if the human being, who, as quantum physics would say, is nothing but an immense agglomerate of oscillations, how can it make his oscillations or vibrations so coherent that they, similar to a laser beam, which emits photons in bundled form, cause effects over long distances? From physics, we know that with increasing approach to subtle ranges of energy and matter, space and time become relative. Exactly this is postulated by the so-called Bell's theorem, which became known in quantum physics, according to which no theory of reality, which is compatible with quantum theory, can assume that spatially separated events are independent of each other. Rather, everything is an infinite interrelation with everything. The American team of scientists Ohm Johnson, Dilbeck, and Wallace published an interesting report in 1982 in the prestigious US journal Neuroscience, volume 16, on an EEG experiment with groups practicing the TMCD program together. The article was entitled Intersubjective EEG Coherence. Is consciousness a field? What were the results? In the summer of 1979, a course of practitioners of the TMCD program took place at the University of Amherst, Massachusetts in the USA, in which about 2,500 people participated. Twice a day for 50 minutes, exactly at the same time, the TMCD technique was practiced by this group 1,900 kilometers away in the laboratories of Maharishi International University in Fairfield, Iowa, USA. During the same period, 3 persons were examined for suspected brainwave coherence with a 17-channel electroencephalograph. No member of either group at Amherst or Fairfield knew the purpose of this experience. Neither did the persons examined in the Fairfield laboratories know when the larger group in Amherst began their TMCD program. After the completion of the course in Amherst, the same subjects were tested again for 6 days during the same time of day as before. The result was clear. The interpersonal EEG coherence of the 3 subjects in Amherst increased significantly in all frequency bands during the TMCD flight program of the Amherst group. An interpretation of this result would mean that 2 spatially far separated groups unconsciously react to each other with a kind of neurophysiological resonance through special coherence effects occurring only during the special group flying program. The coherence radiated by the Amherst group was intense enough to cause measurable effects in a control group 1,000 kilometers away. Quantum mechanical resonance through electrophysiological coherence. We are easily on the threshold of our scientific age, from which we are gaining the first perspectives into the completely unexplored space of the sociology of higher states of consciousness. Resonance phenomena have been known in nature for a long time and never been really fully understood. What is the reason, for example, that two pendulum clocks hanging on the wall next to each other, as the Dutch scientist Huygens discovered in the 17th century, begin to beat in the same rhythm after a certain time? Two oscillators oscillate synchronously when they pulsate in the same field at almost the same rhythm. George Leonard writes in his book The Rhythm of the Cosmos, "A quantum mechanical model of the human brain will certainly enable decisive discoveries in this field of resonance in the foreseeable future. And it will be shown that our nervous system actually oscillates in harmony with the world and the environment and correlates in the most subtle way with all other nervous systems." For the moment, it is enough to say that we are completely, indissolubly and absolutely connected with everything that exists, and that the next step of evolution will at least be to become aware of the connectedness. Quote from George Leonard, The Rhythm of the Cosmos. Quantum theory is the koan of our time. Physicists speak of quantum entanglement. Two entangled photons react as if they were one. One of the photons is affected no matter where the other photon is in the universe, without any delay. Maybe there's a world that exists within light, and no matter where you are in the universe, photons can act as portals that enable communication between these two worlds. Yes, there is an energy field inside and around us, which is woven by the thoughts of our brain and the feelings of our heart, captured and resonating by all those and everything around us, far and near. Yes, as far as our lives reach. And it is our intentions which are the main dynamics inside this web of resonances. And this web stretches far beyond what we think. Chaos theory suggests that a butterfly flapping its wings over in China can trigger a hurricane over in the United States. And when the heart flaps its wings, its influence on the field of connections with our environment are tremendous. A healthy heartbeat of society can create a powerful butterfly effect on the whole planet. And did you know that people who experience a high level of coherence exhibit a general sense of well-being and improvements in cognitive, social, and physical performance? Yes, it is more about the heart than the brain of the collective as a whole. An EEG that measures brainwaves shows that the electromagnetic signals from the heart are so much stronger than brainwaves that a reading of the heart's frequency spectrum can be taken from 3 feet away from the body, without the need to place electrodes on it. And did you know that individuals are capable of generating high ratios of heart coherence via love, appreciation, forgiveness? They are able to alter their DNA conformation, its shape or structure, according to their intentions. Generally, participants with the highest level of coherence affected the DNA samples the most, as shown by cell biologist Glenn Rain and IHM Research Director Roland McCraty. The research laboratory of the future is the human consciousness. and consciousness becomes quantifiable. Experiences of higher states of consciousness, which were formerly assigned to the mystical realm, become systematically accessible to more and more people. We should not forget that our concern for humanity can only bring about an improvement when we become healthier ourselves and put this recovery from the depths of the given self-created unity at the service of the whole humanity. For utopia is in full swing. Human peace is more possible than ever today. In the midst of chaos, more possible than ever. The enormous responsibility that today belongs to the representatives of a new culture of consciousness, culture of the human biofield, should not be underestimated. Once again, it is true, when the light comes in, the darkness must give way. Those who cling to outdated ideas and who are unaware of the possibility of living the full potential of natural law will react as one reacts to an earthquake. This is from Maharishi. So we do not want to forget. We are all living in an ocean of vibrating energy fields. It is on us to choose the waves and the ocean we want to be. As it is said so beautifully in a text of the Buddha, it would be better to live a single day in the development of a good life of meditation than to spend 100 years badly and with untrained thinking. Only a new seed can bring a new crop. If this principle can gain general acceptance, success will be predictable. Why should higher states of consciousness, at the ancient patrimony of our consciousness, not be the catalyst in this collective process of transformation? After all, TM and TMCD techniques not only unleash miraculous powers, but also develop our universally accepted and so much needed human virtues of kindness, compassion, and happiness. The time places a higher demand on our humanity because inhumanity has become more extensive and chaos more threatening. The Operation Consciousness is in full swing and has become, perhaps for the first time in the history of Earth, a concern of the many who have understood that whoever puts a stop to his own chaos also transforms the chaos of the world into light. The shadows are clearing, the earth is awakening.